Looking at Facebook a couple of days ago, I came across an advertisement for the Times literary supplement. And it was quite interesting because it had a quote at the top of it which seemed to indicate, at the very best, a misconception, but possibly something more complex and interesting about the way academia has dismantled, or is trying to dismantle, some fundamentals of culture and ways of thinking that it clearly finds offensive. But it's not immediately obvious from this quotation. The book it's selling is In the Crucible of Empire. Now, I'm not criticising a TLS at this stage because they're dealing with a piece of culture, I suppose, which is their stock in trade. And mistaking stock in trade for the people who are providing methods of criticism and ways of looking at things is a big mistake. Anyway, the quotation at the top of this article, it goes as follows. As any close reader of Austen or Bronte knows, behind the drama of the British social order lurked the violence of the Caribbean. The title of the article, which I'm going to consider, is as follows. Deconstruction of truth makes everything false. Relativism destroys agency and freedom. So-called deconstruction of language assumes a quasi-Marxist oppressive narrative. Good versus bad permeates everywhere. Deconstruction assumes what it wants to find and then tries to reverse engineer a direct causal link. Slavery represented around 2 to 5% of a UK gross domestic product at the time. Despite horror and inhumanity, it did not build the Industrial Revolution, nor arguably didn't do much to build the empire. The vast majority who built it were white working people, many with a life expectancy of less than 45 years, most living in appalling squalor. Meanwhile, Benin supplied 20% of all slaves across the Atlantic, including Brazil, the largest slave nation. Over a longer period, a greater number were shipped to the Middle East with the added horror of castration of all males and consequent death toll en route. The economy of Dahomey, then Benin, and a vast wealth of its kings, such as Guizhou, was highly dependent on slavery. On this basis, the crucible of empire could equally be in Africa. Yes, Caribbean sugar wars, US slavery, and much else were horrors that consumed millions of lives. No, great novels of the time and later were not racist manifestos or apologists for violence and obscene inhumanity. That allegation would be better directed at today's politicians in Africa, Pakistan, UK, US and elsewhere, all happily condemning an empire, although far from innocent, which abolished slavery, while they do nothing about modern slavery. The TLS appears to take such offers seriously, seeming denial of its history, while turning a blind eye to the violence of modern slavery. Such offers pretend hidden racism is discovered by deconstruction, when, in many cases, assumed prejudices bordering on self-hatred are created by working backwards to pretend they're genuine discoveries when they are not. Words, phrases, sentences, paragraphs, chapters and books carry meaning, the result of successive combination and metamorphosis. Consequent meanings or understandings are no more or less than the sum of what went to make them. They are different in such a way that the process is non-logical. Meaning is combined to create new meaning and understanding that are not the logical sum, despite being the product of what was before. The distinction between sum and product is critical. Deconstructionists appear to think you can find the caterpillar by analysing the butterfly. This might be possible, as modern science has shown such metamorphosis is not absolute, but metamorphosis of meaning appears to be different. Deconstructionists believe you can analyse language to find hidden horrors. Why they never find hidden positives, such as love, loyalty, generosity, altruism, and humanity, is telling. Words alone are not the start. Instead, they assume the horrors they claim to unmask, according tiring academic status to the likes of Derrida for his close to transparent slight of reason. The process is as follows. Assume what is to be claimed, then work backwards on the text, a sort of reverse analysis, to reach a way of presenting it in such a light that negative, often dehuman assumptions appear credible. The idea that Bronte and Austen were closet apologists for violence, worse, that their writing is laced with the full oppression of white supremacists and inhumanity, is a product of purist academic prejudice, irrationality, and ambition to destroy the culture that, ironically, provides the status and material benefit or privilege to make such insulting allegations. It's easy to be convinced by exceptions, such as Admiral Lord Rodney's victory against the French to control economic exploitation of the New World. But the violence of the Caribbean, including the Battle of the Saints, which was his victory, did not lurk behind the British social order. Things were vastly more complicated. The threat in the British justice system, with execution for petty offences commonplace, was very real and vastly more significant. Violence within society was more significant than violence between societies. Attempts to globalise history on the back of closed system ideological theories tend to ignore this. White privilege is racism born of academic privilege. What right do rogue academics think they have to divide humanity, once a la mode in the mid-20th century Europe, even as they accuse others of being as they are? What right to undermine the foundations of culture and society, bringing their peers into disrepute? Blinded by self-entitlement, closed system theories creating artificial stupidity in otherwise sensible, highly intelligent, educated individuals. There can be scarce greater irony. As any close reader of Austen or Bronte knows, behind the drama of the British social order lurked the violence of the Caribbean. Prejudiced reader would be closer to the truth. Yes, it is complicated. I struggled a bit writing this, particularly as it does require more than the usual attention and acceptance that an awfully large amount of what's considered to be academic discipline and received truth and methodology really doesn't cut it. The academics particularly seem to have leads around their feet, dragging them underwater, and they seem to be quite incapable of understanding some very simple things, particularly about the sophistication of society, let alone the paradoxes of reason or the way metamorphosis deals with meaning, and so much more, even down to physical things, such as the process of combining elements together to produce, for sake of argument, iron, is phenomenal. It's a sort of magical transformation which, for people in the Stone Age, would have felt that it was purely beyond belief. A technology so fantastic that you could take lumps of rock, heat them up in a particular way, and suddenly they become metallic. It's hard to get your mind around it. Well, it was for them, but for the modern, they seem to take this completely for granted. And so their ignorance and lack of wonder has reduced them to those who find listening very, very difficult. It's very strange, and at times quite frightening. And of course, the political implications are appalling, because most modern politicians have gone through the university mill and have been converted into people fixated by closed system political theories which dominate their lives and their thinking. And a closed system is self-justifying and by definition is cut off from the world, society and physical reality. So there you go. If you do have time, read this a bit more and see if I make any sense or not. Thanks again. I will be putting out another one in a few days' time with any luck. Bye for now.